Well, I think it's safe to say that weekend probably could have gone a little bit better for the Nashville Predators, don't you? A disastrous weekend for the Preds, and not just talking about what happened on the scoreboard, but Roman Josi, the Preds captain, also injured. How are the Predators going to move forward without him? And in what context should we view the Predators' 7-0 loss to the New York Rangers, plus minus a highlight of a couple players who have stepped up over the past week, all coming up today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast available to you wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com, and normally I have a partner in crime, but it's Ann Kimmel's birthday. So she is taking the morning off. She picked a good time to have a birthday because she doesn't have to talk about the Nashville Predators and their past weekend. Good gift. Happy birthday, Anna. Yeah, it is. It is a weekend for the Nashville Predators. Not only does Roman Josi go down, that is a big loss. We'll talk about that more coming up later in the show. But the Predators played 2 games, 2 critical games for their slim but still out there playoff hopes. I mean, they did come to this weekend controlling their own playoff fate, believe it or not. And 2 losses that kind of represented 2 different things. So let's go into the games first, shall we? Saturday against Winnipeg. This was the game a lot of people had circled. Remember, the Winnipeg Jets were the team right in front of Nashville in the standings. Nashville Predators had more possible remaining points than the Jets. So technically, the Preds came in controlling their own playoff destiny, but they needed a win over the Jets to kind of take their out of nowhere playoff chances to the next step. Started off just fine. Cody Glass with the Preds up 1-0. Preds played a pretty good job in the second period. Again, despite Roman Josi leaving after the first period with an injury. A lot of people stepped up and I thought had pretty good games. Third period, floodgates opened a little bit. Nicholas Ehlers scored for the Jets. Luke Evangelista put the Preds back up ahead just seconds later. Very good response. Preds couldn't hold on, though. Adam Lowry scored to tie the game late in the third, and then Neil Pionk in overtime gave the Jets a win. Preds took a point, but Jets got the all-important 2, took some of that control of the playoff race back into their hands. Predators then the next night, last night, going to Madison Square Garden against the New York Rangers, right now one of the hottest teams in the entire NHL. And this is where the wheels just completely fell off. 6 goals for the New York Rangers in the first period. 4 of those on starter Kevin Lankinen. He was pulled. UC Saros came in, not much better to start, just, a minute after he came into the game. Artemi Panarin scored again on the power play. Keandre Miller scored again. Chris Kreider scored in the second to make it 7-0. And that was the final score. Preds lose 7-0. Absolutely disastrous game. We'll talk about the context of it coming up in just a second. One word to describe this weekend's worth of games for the Nashville Predators. It's more of one concept or one video, but it's rubber bands around a watermelon. Now, if you've ever been on TikTok or YouTube or Twitter or whatever the kids are using for content nowadays, you've probably seen a watermelon rubber band video. This is just, people are in the backyard. It's kind of a challenge. They just keep putting little rubber bands one at a time around a watermelon. Kind of looks pointless at first, but then you get to like 100, 200 rubber bands, just like this big, thick layer of rubber around the watermelon. You start to see it squeeze ease a little bit, you start to maybe see crack form. And eventually what happens is all that pressure of each of those little rubber bands combined just becomes too much, and the watermelon just explodes in some spectacular fashion that makes Gallagher, squeal with delight. A giant watermelony explosion. And boy, isn't that a good metaphor for where the Nashville Predators are in this point of the season so far? There's been so much that's happened with the trade deadline, with kind of the poor start, with all of these players kind of falling below expectations, and especially with Roman Josi out now, all of these different injuries. It has just been little rubber band, little rubber band, little rubber band after little rubber band around the watermelon that is the Nashville Predators season. All these little things adding up. And for a long time, there's a lot of rubber bands around the Nashville Predators, and they were still holding up. You lose Ryan Johansen for the season right before the trade deadline. Nashville Predators were still holding on, still on a pretty decent run, despite some, kind of ugly losses in there. They were still holding on. You lose Nino Niederreiter at the trade deadline. You lose Matthias Ekholm. You lose Mikael Granlund. You lose somebody else, Tanner Jeannot. It's been a week, guys. You lose all these players, and there's a bunch more rubber bands around that watermelon, and you think, oh yeah, this is the beginning of the end, and somehow the Nashville Predators were still holding it together. Then come the injuries. You lose Filip Forsberg. There's still no timetable for when he's going to be back, which is starting to get a little concerning. You have Alexandre Carrier probably out for the rest of the year. You have Ryan McDonagh go down, day-to-day injury again. You're still without Juuso Parssinen. All these little rubber bands kept going on the watermelon, and you're thinking, like, this is it. The Predators just don't have the depth. They don't have anything to kind of combat this. And trade deadline left them thin already. Now they're incapable of kind of putting anything together. But still, like, as we mentioned, the Predators went in this weekend controlling their own playoff fate. But I think this weekend is when we saw that one rubber band that finally caused that watermelon to crack. And that's the Roman Josi injury. That wasn't necessarily a rubber band. That was like a very, very small exercise compression band that just completely popped that watermelon. And you saw it happen against the New York Rangers last night. There was just too much, I think, for the Nashville Predators to deal with at that point, to really go out there and put forth a good effort against a good team. And I know, rough game for Kevin Lankinen. I know that's part of it, but, he didn't get a lot of help in front of him. And without Roman Josi now, that is a big concern for the Nashville Predators. And look, they did a good job keeping that watermelon together for a big chunk of the stretch run. You had these young players step up. You have guys like Tommy Novak having unbelievable seasons, trying to earn a spot for next year. Newer guys like Luke Evangelista and Phil Tomasino stepping in the lineup and kind of exceeding what the expectations for them were. And, they were leading the team. They were kind of keeping that watermelon together, but there has just been too much stuff that's happened for the Nashville Predators to kind of keep being a viable playoff contender. And not saying that they were, lights out contenders before this weekend either, because, we talked about what can they do to get in the playoffs. We talked about, realistically, were they a playoff team? And, Ann and I, being optimists, always tried to put the spin on it. Like, yeah, things go right, maybe. But, even then it was kind of a long shot. And now with all these players out, including Roman Josi, including Filip Forsberg, there's just not a lot for the Nashville Predators to fall back on. So it feels like the watermelon for the Nashville Predators has kind of finally showed their cracks. They have some tough games coming up on the schedule, including the Buffalo Sabres this week, who they themselves are fighting for their playoff lives at the moment. You have a back-to-back against Seattle. You got Toronto. You got Boston. You got Pittsburgh. You have a absolutely gauntlet remaining schedule. And if this is the team that the Nashville Predators are rolling into those matchups, I think it's only a matter of time before that watermelon completely explodes. But you know what? Kudos to them. We'll talk about how the Nashville Predators move forward despite all that. How do the Nashville Predators navigate Roman Josi's injury? We'll hear from John Hynes on that. A couple of young players who have stepped up, plus a gripe in plus minus. There's somebody in particular that I think we really need to highlight as needing to do a little bit better. I'll come up in just a second, but first want to take a second and mention today's show, sponsored by Athletic Greens and their product, which I use every day, AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. Special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, aging, pretty much all of the things. I've talked about it before. AG1 sent me a free little tin of powder. I was very skeptical at first, but gave it a shot. And after taking it for a while, I started having more energy. I didn't have that, midday lull where it got 2 o'clock and all I needed was a nap. And I felt a little bit more, stable stomach, not tummy rumblings or anything like that, more kind of a healthy lifestyle. And because of that, I made AG1 a daily part of my routine. It cost me less than $3 a day, which is cheaper than my old coffee habit that I used to go to. Don't have to run to Starbucks anymore. Instead, I'm investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance, and it's still cheaper than going out and buying all those different kind of vitamins for myself. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 five-star reviews, recommended by professional athletes and trusted by leading health experts such as Tim Ferriss and Michael Gervais. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. All it is one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right. So one of the big headlines for the Nashville Predators this past weekend is the loss of Roman Josi. Touched on it a little bit just from a storyline perspective, but moving forward, boy, this is going to be tough for the Nashville Predators to try and navigate. The injury itself, not really sure what happened. He did take a couple of rough hits in that Winnipeg Jets game, but kept playing and then wound up leaving after the first intermission. Didn't really seem like he was laboring or anything like that. I think there's more, Twitter doctors posting different clips and being like, is this it? Is this it? Is this it? So we're not really sure what happened to Roman Josi. We're not sure. Maybe he got banged up in practice. Maybe he was sick. All we know is that he is day to day at this point for the Nashville Predators. And that is going to be a big factor in determining what the story of this rest of the Nashville Predators season is, because the Nashville Predators need Roman Josi like humans need oxygen. I mean, he is just a focal point of what they do, not just defensively on the blue line. I mean, he's, at this point, probably their best two-way defender, but he's their centerpiece of their offense. I mean, he's the quarterback on the power play. A lot of the setup, a lot of the zone entries and stuff go through Roman Josi, and all of a sudden you don't have him in your lineup. That changes everything you do if you're the Nashville Predators. That's going to be a big factor to try to navigate. Now, the Predators played that Rangers game with a very, very weird looking lineup. You had Dante Fabro and Tyson Berry together on that first line. There's a lot of shuffling too. You had Cal Foot play some extended minutes, which no disrespect to Cal Foot, but that's probably a bit of a setback. You had guys like Jordan Gross coming up from Milwaukee playing big minutes. Guys like Jeremy Lazan had to step up their game. You're stretched very thin right now, and you have a lot of people who are best suited in playing, kind of reserve minutes, kind of as, pick and choose your spots, specialist kind of guys now having to step up and play normal minutes, normal situations. And that's a big test. The Predators did okay against the Winnipeg Jets in that regard. And that's something John Hynes talked about is one of the biggest things that he's going to need from some of his reserves with Josi out. Let's listen in.
Yeah, I mean, it's really challenging. I mean, no one can fill Roman's role. I mean, the amount of ice time that he plays with, obviously the natural skill, his ability to generate offense, break the puck out of the zone. So you have to try to divide it up, as best you can with whether that's guys taking some. I don't think there was much power play after he was gone, but that's going to be one. If he is out, you got to be able to do that. Some of the penalty kill, but a lot of the 5-on-5 play, and just I think what he means to the team. But I thought those guys battled and did a good job. When Foot was in the box for the fight, we were down to 4D, and those guys battled hard. I mean, Gravel played well, Foot played well. They stepped up when we needed them here tonight.
They did step up against Winnipeg, against the Rangers. Maybe not so much. Although it's tough to blame all of that on that Predators defense. But that's going to be the thing: is if Roman Josi's out, who takes his spot 5-on-5? Who's kind of that guy that facilitates all of these starting plays, that really pushes the offense and gets the Preds going on the right foot? You have Tyson Berry, but Tyson Berry can't play every single shift. This is an opportunity for Dante Fabro to take that next step in his development that we've been kind of waiting 5 years to see him take. Jordan Gross, this is an opportunity for him to prove maybe he's a really good bottom pair defenseman in this long-term Predators picture moving forward, a guy capable of, maybe put him with somebody who's a little bit more solid defensively. And, maybe he's somebody that can prove value. There's a lot of opportunities here for the Nashville Predators defense to step up. That brings me to kind of an interesting thing to talk about too, is this Rangers loss yesterday. And obviously they're going out there with basically the reserve defense. They're basically going out with the Milwaukee Admirals. And that leads to the question, how should we view that loss? It's tough to let's make it clear. This isn't like the St. Louis Blues game a year ago where the Preds gave up 7 goals in one period. And that was kind of the whole fire Hynes, this team is trash kind of thing. The Predators were pretty much at full strength in that point. So I don't think we should be looking at this game in the same lens as that. Like, this isn't just, we look and be like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I mean, it's embarrassing. Let's in any time you lose 7-0, either time you look at the scoreboard at the end of the first period and it's 6-0, that's something you're going to have to cope with. So not going to say it's not embarrassing. I just think it's more of a result of, again, that watermelon with all those rubber bands around it. I think it's more of a result of what has happened to the Predators in the second half of the season, more than a result of, their play, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, the play is responsible for that, but I don't think anybody is pointing to this game as an example of them trying to say like, oh, this team is crashing below expectations. Oh, John Hynes needs to go. This player sucks, blah, 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 blah. Whatever your narrative is, I don't think that Rangers game is something you can use for that. I will say, I think the Predators need to be careful moving forward. Uh, and again, I reiterated this earlier, not saying like the playoffs are the end all be all. And if you fall out of the playoffs, race, we should all be disappointed. Again, I think the biggest factor is looking at little things like what are some of the young players that are developing? Are they earning a spot for next season's team? I think that's still the bigger picture for the Nashville Predators. And I think that's what would dictate the success for the second half of the season. Where I think they need to be careful is they cannot endure more games like that where the season just completely gets away from them. That to me is dangerous because now, you risk people tuning out. Not fans, but the players, if where they are right now, I think there's something maybe tangible to play for. You have this atmosphere of guys like Luke Evangelista and Phil Tomasino coming in and playing games, fighting for a playoff light. You have something tangible for them to work for. Even some veterans, like Matt Duchene, there's something tangible for them to play for right now. And I think, if you let this get too much out of hand and you start having more losses like this, even with all the team, out due to injury, whatever, you still need to put, I think, a better product out there for no other reason, just to kind of keep the team engaged because, the Predators they got Boston coming up. They got Pittsburgh on the schedule who's fighting for their playoff life. They have some tough teams like Dallas down the road. You start losing games like you lost last night routinely. That's, I think, when players are just going to phone it in and be like, you know what? This is it. Let's just kind of get through this and focus on next season. They still need to go game by game and work on things they need to work on. So that's the only warning I think that last night's game gives us is you can't afford more games like that score-wise, or else you're going to lose focus on the things you do need to be working on game by game. So we'll see if the Nashville Predators can turn that around, at least from that aspect. We got plus minus in just a second. There's a couple of players we need to highlight who have stepped up in the midst of some of this dark run. And one player in particular, a little disappointed with. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, I want to mention today's show brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. I know my goal's to eat a little bit healthier this year, but let's face it, sometimes healthy food can be really boring. Well, with Built, healthy is actually tasty. They're so delicious, you won't think they're good for you. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate and come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, cherry barcia. They got a dark fudge puff now. They have a special mint puff that's out for, St. Patrick's Day. But don't let all these delicious flavors fool you because these bars taste like a candy bar, but they have amazing macros. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. We've been telling you for years, you can order your bars at built.com. You absolutely still can, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Head to your nearest Walmart today, go to the pharmacy section, grab a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors like brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. And of course, you can go to built.com anytime you want and see all the amazing flavors they have available for you. Tell them we sent you. All right, it is Monday, which means it is time for plus minus. I don't have Ann here to do the other half of the hand gestures with me. This is where we go through the past week of Predators hockey, highlight some positive things, give them a plus, and then give minuses to things we think need improvement. Let's talk about the pluses first. This is a 2-for-1. My first plus is Phil Tomasino. Now, this is a guy who has dealt with a lot of disappointment this season. this guy was somebody that we thought was going to reach up and be that number 2 winger this season, that number 2 guy on that second line. For whatever reason, we've beaten a dead horse about it on this point. So, we don't need to dive back into it, but for whatever reason, didn't work out. Not only did he not go back to the fourth line where he was last year, but he wasn't on the team at all. Sent to Milwaukee. Preds thought he needed some more development. It's been kind of an up and down season for him with the Admirals so far, so weren't quite sure what we were going to get when he got called up early last month. But I have to say, he has been pretty good, especially these last couple of games. 5 points now in his last 5 games, a goal and 4 assists. He has 11 points overall in the 17 games he's played. This is a guy who looks refreshed. And, with all the trades, all the injuries, he's getting his opportunity to get top 6 minutes, something he didn't get a lot of in his first step, but he's making the most of it. I love the playmaking ability that Tomasino plays with. This is a guy, I mentioned it last week when talking about him. This is a guy that looks like he can put himself in other players' shoes. And that's something really good playmakers can do. He cuts to the net and his first thought is, okay, where's this guy going to be? Where's this guy going to be? That kind of ability to be in tune with some of your other players, that's something that I think really good playmakers have. That's something a lot of veteran players in the NHL don't have. So for Phil Tomasino to kind of have that kind of eye, that kind of ability to look at a play and break down where other people are going to be and realizing who's got the best chance to score, you're seeing that on a lot of the assists that Tomasino is getting this year. And I really like that about his game. So Phil Tomasino, a plus to him. And the other part of the 2-for-1 is Luke Evangelista. Scoring-wise, he's cooled off a little bit, although he did have that very hot start earlier in this season. He got that goal against the Winnipeg Jets the other night. Scoring-wise, a little bit off from, maybe where someone like Tomasino is, only 5 points in 10 games played this season. But you watch his level of play, and you see something special in this kid. I don't know what the ceiling is going to be. I don't know if he's going to be, like a top line guy. I don't know if he's more centered in, on that second line, maybe as, a very, very good depth scorer. But I love the energy this kid plays with. I love that his first thought is always just get to the net. Like, he's got one speed. This is a guy that gets the puck and just marches towards the net. I love that about Luke Evangelista. And I think if he keeps doing that, you're going to see more consistent scoring. It's almost like, he reminds me a little bit of Victor Arvidsson back in, some of the early Victor Arvidsson days where he just got the puck and just went all the way to the net, crashed the net, that kind of stuff. He reminds me a little bit of, the early Victor Arvidsson days, which is something I like about him. He's got some flaws, and he was asked this weekend after the Jets game, what's something in particular that he's working on? And it's funny that we mentioned Arvidsson because listen to what he says.
I think my defensive game has gotten a little bit better. I got to be more aware out there because I always say that, guys, lines 1 through 4 here can really make plays. So your defensive awareness has to be better in this league. So I've been focusing on that over this stretch here. I'm just kind of enjoying the moment. I'm still kind of on cloud 9 here, just living out a dream, playing the NHL, and step in right away and playing these big important games and make a push on the stretch here. It's been really good for, I think, just an experience for me to kind of get used to the league and see what high pressure stakes there are.
Yeah, I love that he's willing to mention his defensive skill because obviously that was kind of something that he wasn't, I guess, had a huge marks on. But if he's going to be playing top 6 minutes, that's something that he actively needs to work on. That's something that, I mentioned Victor Arvidsson. That's something Arvidsson did very well, very good defensively. And again, if Evangelista can round out that part of his game, I think we're going to see a very, very talented top 6 player that the Nashville Predators can build around moving forward. Minus, this is somebody that kind of hurts me to talk about, but somebody whose absence has kind of been very noticeable. We need to talk about Matt Duchene. You look at it now, and he has now gone 6 games without a point of any kind. He hasn't scored a goal since March 2nd against Florida. He hasn't gotten a point since 1 assist March 9th against Arizona. That's disappointing to me. And here's the thing, we talked about the Nashville Predators losing a lot of key guys, whether it be via trade or via injury, it doesn't matter. You need your remaining guys to step up. And I just haven't seen that from Matt Duchene, in this situation. I know that he's lost a lot of his help. And, you saw what happened a couple of years ago when you put Matt Duchene with not very good line mates. And, we saw what happened in the 13-point season when Matt Duchene was with Brad Richardson and Eric Halla for a portion of that. But it's disappointing because a guy you're paying $8 million to be on your team, a guy who, you kind of pictured as your number one center when you signed him, you need him to have the opposite effect. You need him to kind of be what Phil Tomasino was, last year, and what he's been this year is you need him to be the guy that elevates other players. Like, you need him to go out there and make the people he's playing with look better. And he hasn't done that really since the trade deadline. Like, it's kind of gone the other way, where it's just, he looks just a little bit out of it right now. And, this is not me questioning effort or anything like that, because I don't know him. I don't know what's in his head. I don't know what's, being said in the locker room. All I know is on the ice, he's had very minimal impact. At this point, guys like Tomasino, guys like Cody Glass, guys like Tommy Novak, those are the people that when they had the puck, I'm like, all right, here comes Nashville's best chance. You don't want to say that when there's a guy who just had 86 points and 43 goals a year ago on your team, still on the team. You want him to kind of be the guy, when guys like Roman Josi goes down, put the team on your shoulders and say, screw it. We are marching back towards the playoffs, boys. You want him to kind of be that guy, and he just hasn't been that guy. So very disappointed in what Matt Duchene's brought to the Preds this second half of the season. We'll see if, maybe he rebounds, maybe if he snaps out of the slump, has a good second half of the year, maybe maybe things get a little bit better for him. All right, now to our last plus of the night, something fun to take it home. And this is another source of excitement for the Nashville Predators. But Joakim Kemell, now in North America, now with the Milwaukee Admirals. He's played 2 games for the Ads over this past weekend. And he's just a fun player to watch. He hasn't scored a goal yet. He hasn't scored a point yet. But you watch him and you see something there. I mean, he's just fast. He's got a good shot. This is a player that I think Nashville Predators fans are going to absolutely love, especially when he gets acclimated to North American skating a little bit. You have to wonder maybe if this stint in Milwaukee at the end of this year, depending on how he does for the playoff run, assuming he's going to be a part of that for the Admirals. You assume maybe they're trying to fast track him into maybe being a part of this Nashville Predators team next year, or at least competing. I still think maybe he needs another season in Milwaukee to kind of round out his game, but it's just really fun to see a talented player that's a part of the Preds' future firmly in the organization in Milwaukee. We'll see how he does for the rest of the season, but it's just fun to have a fun player you're able to follow, especially because, hey, a byproduct of all these trades for the Predators and all these injuries is that Milwaukee's lineup has been absolutely decimated as well. And they were one of the best teams in the AHL this year. So let's hope he can step it up and help the Ads make a playoff run. What do you guys think? Who are some of your pluses and minuses from the past week of Preds hockey? Players you thought played a big role, maybe players that you think need to step up a little bit more? Let us know in the comments or tweet us at LO_Predators. We would love to hear your feedback. You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. However you're listening to the show, make sure you subscribe. Really helps us out in the numbers. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. See you then.